There are few topics in Islam that are discussed as much, and sometimes as emotionally, as the question of the niqab, the face veil. Is it an obligation? Is it recommended? Or is it simply a cultural practice? And more importantly, what do the Qur'an and Sunnah actually say? In this video, we're going to explore this topic carefully, respectfully, and with evidence, so that by the end, you don't just have an opinion, you have understanding. First, what is the niqab? The niqab refers to a face covering worn by a Muslim woman, typically leaving the eyes visible. It comes from the Arabic root naqaba, which refers to an opening, specifically for the eyes. So when we say niqab, we're not just talking about modest clothing in general. We're talking specifically about covering the face in front of non-mahram men. Before we go further, we need to be honest. Among the scholars of Islam, there are two well-known opinions. One, that covering the face, niqab, is obligatory, fard, and two, that covering the face is recommended, mustahab, but not obligatory. Both opinions come from respected scholars, across different madhabs. So this is not a matter of right versus wrong, in a simplistic sense. However, many scholars, especially from the Hanbali school and a number of early scholars, held that the niqab is obligatory, based on strong evidences. Let's explore those evidences. Evidence 1. In Surah Al-Ahzab 33:53, Allah says, "And when you ask the wives of the Prophet for something, ask them from behind a screen, hijab. That is purer for your hearts and their hearts." This verse was revealed specifically about the wives of the Prophet, and scholars are in agreement that the mothers of the believers were required to cover their faces completely. There is no ikhtilaf or difference of opinion on this point. They did not interact with men face to face. There was a barrier, a screen, a veil, a covering. But is this only for the wives of the Prophet? This is where scholars differ. Some say this ruling is specific to them due to their unique status. Others say, while the command is directly to them, the wisdom applies to all believing women. And that brings us to the next verse. Evidence 2, Surah Al-Ahzab 33:59. Allah says, "O Prophet, tell your wives, your daughters, and the believing women to draw their outer garments over themselves. That is more suitable so that they will be recognized and not be harmed." Notice something powerful here. Allah does not only address the wives of the Prophet, but also his daughters and all believing women. This expands the command beyond a specific group. How do scholars understand draw their garments? The key phrase here is yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihinna, meaning to bring their outer garments down over themselves. Some early scholars, like Abdullah ibn Abbas, in one narration, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, interpreted this as covering the entire body, including the face, leaving only one eye visible if necessary. Others, however, interpreted it as covering the body except the face and hands. So, again, we see two valid interpretations. Evidence 3, Surah An-Nur 24:31. Allah says, "And tell the believing women to lower their gaze and guard their modesty and not display their beauty except what ordinarily appears." This verse is central to the discussion. The phrase, "except what ordinarily appears," has been interpreted differently. Some scholars said, this refers to the face and hands, meaning they can remain visible. Others said, it refers to outer garments only, not the face itself. Evidence from the Sunnah. Let's now look at authentic narrations. Hadith of Aisha, R.A. Aisha bint Abi Bakr reported, when the verse of hijab was revealed, the women of the Ansar came out as if there were crows on their heads. This narration shows how seriously the early Muslim women took modesty. In another narration, she said, "When men passed by us while we were in ihram, we would lower our garments from our heads over our faces." This is very important. Even during Hajj, when women are not supposed to wear a sewn face covering, they still covered their faces using their garments when men passed by. This indicates covering the face in front of non-mahram men was practiced by the companions. Hadith about looking before marriage. A man came to the Prophet and said he wanted to marry a woman. The Prophet said, "Go and look at her, for that is more likely to create affection between you." Now, think about this. If women's faces were always visible in public, why would the Prophet need to tell him to go and look? This hadith is often used as supporting evidence that women were generally not fully visible to unrelated men. Let's look at the logical perspective. Now, beyond textual evidence, scholars also discuss wisdom. The face is the center of beauty, the source of expression, and the main point of attraction. When people recognize someone, they recognize their face. So some scholars argue that if modesty is meant to protect dignity and reduce temptation, then covering the face aligns with that purpose. However, this is a reasoning argument, not the only basis of ruling. Here's where we need to be careful. Some people present this issue as if you don't wear niqab, you are sinful. Others say, niqab has no basis at all. Both extremes are problematic. The correct understanding is there is strong evidence used by scholars who say it is obligatory. There is also strong evidence used by scholars who say it is recommended. And both sides include respected ulama, scholars. About safety and protection, the verse 33:59 mentions, so that they may be recognized and not harmed, meaning recognized as modest, dignified, and not to be harassed. Modesty in Islam is not just about clothing, it's about behavior, speech, presence. Clothing is one part of a bigger system. Here is a deeper perspective. At its core, this discussion is not just about rules. It's about obedience to Allah, sincerity in worship, dignity, and identity. Whether a woman wears niqab or not, the real question is she striving to please Allah? Because that is what ultimately matters. So, where does this leave us? The niqab is considered obligatory by many scholars. It is considered recommended by others. It has clear roots in the Qur'an and Sunnah. It was practiced by many early Muslim women. But at the same time, this is an issue of legitimate scholarly difference. And in Islam, when such ikhtilaf exists, we approach it with knowledge, respect, wisdom, not harshness.